are. Good morning, everyone, and as Julianne said, welcome to the spring. I have a bad habit of moving the microphone away, so just say something if I do. Okay. This course came to be because several years ago, the Humanities Curriculum Committee asked the members of ILR, what would you like, what kind of courses would you like? And one thing was, we'd like to know something about gardens in Gainesville or in the area. So, of course, COVID came along and we didn't do anything, but now we're doing it, so welcome. I think most of you have looked at the bulletin and you know the schedule that we'll be using. Today we're going to have Peg Owens talk about pocket gardens or community gardens in Gainesville. And then Mary White is here to talk about bromeliads, which we have many of here. Mary's babies, as she calls them. A couple of interesting facts that you might just roll around in your head. And I just found this out last week. This is National Master Garden Week. Yay, let's have a round of applause. And it's the 50th anniversary of the Master Gardeners. The program was started in Washington State in 1973, and it has spread to the other 49 states. All 67 counties in Florida have Master Gardener programs. And many of us are Master Gardeners here in Alachua County. And Wendy Wilbur is actually the state head of Master Gardeners now. Many of you might know her. I see some heads shaking. Yeah, and actually Mary well, I was a transfer, but I was in one of Wendy's classes. Peg, you might have been also as a transfer. So anyway, we're all very fond of Wendy and are delighted that she's heading the state program. We're all under the rubric of IFAS, which stands for Institute for Food and Agricultural Services. I always have to think about that. And it's under the University of Florida. So that's the 50th anniversary of Master Gardeners. The Gainesville Garden Club actually started in 1924. So next year will be their 100th anniversary. So that's something else to celebrate. Gainesville is also recognized as a tree city, and it was named a tree city in 1983. So that's 40 years. This is a big year. And this year, Gainesville has been named a bee city. That's right. So things will be buzzing around here. We do have some handouts for you. They're in the back. I know that some of you took them. If you haven't, go ahead and do that. And Julianne, who was indispensable for us here, we couldn't do this without her, has sent the handouts to the people who are on Zoom so they can pull them off and run them at home. Okay, so I think that's enough about why we're here. And the first person I'd like to introduce is Peg Owens. She's actually, I guess, should I say a retired Master Gardener, or she's...
Yes.
Well, we both be out here, and Julia.
Yes, ever since moving here, I got too busy. It became hard hearing.
Okay, so, but she was a Master Gardener for at least 20 years. And she's also, as many of you know, the informal manager, I say informal, but of the Oak-Hammock raised bed gardens. And if you haven't been over there, you need to go over and see what Peg has done there. It's really a wonderful place to visit. Peg is a master of garden design, I think, and I think a lot of other people do too. Peg will be telling us about the pocket gardens or community gardens of Gainesville and Oak-Hammock, because we do have a number of pocket gardens here. Okay, after she finishes, we can have questions and answers, and then Mary will be introduced and she will tell us about bromeliads. And then at the very end, we can have questions and answers, and I'll try to think of questions and answers. Okay, thank you so much.
The blanks, for the two right? Make sure you see this out. There we go. Okay, she mentioned that we are the city of trees. And it was once said that if a squirrel started on one side of the city, he could get you completely over to the other side of the city without touching the ground. So, and the other common refrain and things like that here in town are, does it need, when you're looking at plants, does it need sun? Because everybody is saying, you know, they're always showing us these attractive plants that will grow in sun, but then when they get to the things that will grow in shade, there's not quite as many. Okay, so that's it. So they have the city has put in 12 what I call pocket gardens, what they call community gardens. And the one on the left is the one I know more of because my girlfriend lives down the street from the Hippodrome, and this garden is in that same area. So we're always checking her garden out when we walk. Gardens build community. These community gardens build through mutual interests. It's not as convenient as going out your front door and gardening. I've got to admit, it's not as convenient. But what you do to have is camaraderie. And you can ask people how their things are doing and what they would suggest that you do. So, so that's the plus side for our gardens. Oakhammock has their cottage garden. No one lives here, but it's out there, and we store our supplies in it. The garden, what I really like, this was just an old shed, and not an old shed, but a new shed. And I negotiated for the birds. I said, if I don't have louver shutters on that, can I have a bird? So I had the birds put on, and Gary, who used to work here, he agreed to it. This is our garden. Here today is Roy Hodge, and that's Roy's, in the foreground, is Roy's garden. And I remember touring Roy's garden back in Gulfview when he had his home there. And he had a beautiful garden there, and he has a beautiful raised garden here. We'll see, there's Tamar who lives here, and she has, this larkspur just grows naturally there. You know, we treasure our larkspur. I believe might have been started by Roy's sister, and it carries on. We also have a huge greenhouse, and where everybody, when they move in, they can bring their orchids especially. Although I have lovely coleus and things on mine and begonias, but a lot of people bring their treasured plants, and which are especially good for the winter time. Because how many times have I had to run out to the garden to cover, you know, first I give them a talk. I say, hey, buckle up, it's going to be cold tonight. Well, then about 10 o'clock, I would put on my coat and my robe, and I'd run out and put a cover over them. So never achieved too much of that. When I moved, Rod and I moved to Winter Haven. That's Cypress Gardens. You have to say that because there's so many winters in Florida. Winter Haven, we were in 9A, and And so I learned my gardening in Florida there. And we had our freezes. There were a lot of citrus freezes, and but you know, everything else, you learned how to do things. We then moved to Celebration, Disney's town, and they also were in Arizona. So everybody was moving in from all over the country. They were planting things they shouldn't be planting, and they thought they could do, you know, petunias in the heat of the summer because that's how they did it up north. So I started the garden club. I went around. It was just, there were hardly any people there, but on everybody's porch that looked like it might be a gardener, I put a little notice, come to my house on such and such a date. And 14 people showed up. And that was the start of the garden club in Celebration. They have reached up to 140 members now. Disney, I'm told Disney thought it would never work. And they have had, before the pandemic, they had 140 members. Now they're down to around 80, and they're still thriving. So I'm very proud of having started that. Oh, but what I didn't tell you is what happened. I was in 9. I was in 9-9. I thought I was moving to Gainesville, and all of a sudden I'd be 8B. Well, lo and behold, 8B. Gainesville has changed their number now too, and they are 9A. So I just can't seem to escape that 9, although I think, well, you know, further south, maybe Winter Haven has changed a bit too. So. I'm new to this area. So many people here have asked me that. You know, where can I buy plants that are suited to this zone? So I'll show you a few that I recommend. First off, I'll talk about seed. You can plant seed most any time, any place. You have to go by the chart where that seed would grow in your area. But other than that, you're planting an annual, and it's almost, you know, you can choose what you want to plant. I love this Baker Creek. They have a wonderful catalog. They're out of Missouri. They are just an earthy group of people. I mean, they are just hippies type, and they really love the land. They love their seed. And they are exploding. I mean, they have a place now in California where they do certain aspects of it. And I just think they're a nice company to deal with. When they say on their packet $3, that includes the shipping. So that's nice too, because sometimes when you do with the big companies like parks and stuff, you have to get a minimum, otherwise you pay so much. So this way you know how much you're paying. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my garden has changed. I used to garden under lights in the garage in Hale. We lived in Hale, and I would start my annuals in the garage under shop lights. Now, to start seed, you really don't need grow lights. You do need light, and fluorescent lights will do. If you want flowers, sometimes you need the grow lights, but if you're just growing plants. I grow in, this is my tiny little sewing area. So we set up a little shelf. When I stack books up to get the plants closer, and as they grow, the seed, I have to get them further away from the light, from 2 to 4 inches is usually ideal. So I start pulling books out, or adding books. And, you know, and that's the way I do it. And this is what provides Rob, my husband, with his kale, which is a different variety this year. It comes from Baker Creek, and it's in the food store too. It's called dinosaur kale. And so he's been eating that now, and that's his new thing. But we started it just the same way. I see all the writing on there because I used to do classes for Celebration High, and they would plant seeds and, you know, teach them about that. And I don't have any left, but this is a remnant of their scribbling. So. Okay, what is the most all-purpose, all-around garden center do we have, you know? And I believe it's Garden Gate. And I just had a new resident come back and they said, you know, those people were so friendly. And I can agree on that. They're very friendly, very helpful. Been around a long time before before 43rd Street was as crowded as it is now. They also have pots and beautiful, beautiful pots. For me, as I get older, I left my heavy ones back at the house. I wish I had taken them because although I still want them, even though they are getting to be too heavy. But that's where you can go and find lovely pots. The other place I like to go to is Ward's. And Ward's has seedlings and herbs from people who grow them locally. And you never know what you'll find there, but it's always safe to look. What you might do also, if you want a real Gainesville experience, would be to go to Ward's, then go to Satchel's for a slice of pizza and a salad, and then go on to Grow Hub. And my third place is Grow Hub. Grow Hub was started and it was part of Boston High School. So I've been going to it for years when it was that. Well, what happened is the people that work there with disabilities and everything, they were aging out of the school system. So they started looking for a way to continue that, you know, they were very productive and for them to stay productive and useful in society. So they started collecting funds and doing sales, even at Old Cabin. We donated our leftover furniture to them and everything, and they pick it up and then sell it at the garage sales and things like that. So we at Old Cabin, we even have bought plants from them, and they grow a lot, and they'll grow special orders for the different nurseries in town, and they're really thriving. The problem is they're kind of out of the way, and people don't know about them, so they're trying to do something about that. Here's one of their greenhouses, one of their tunnels. They have, they're really rather advanced. They have all the drip irrigation, and I think David, who is their manager, will be speaking to you not too long from now on one of the Wonders programs. He'll be coming out and speaking to it. It's a wonderful place to support. So you had your Gainesville experience, and this is still, we're at Grow Hub, and these are their planters, and these are Vago planters, and they were instituted there, David says, because they had an accident. One of their people had an accident using the old little ones, like we use here, and so they have put in many of these, and with drip irrigation to each. Now this is my final, and I'm showing you a picture of our garden again, and I wanted to show you our 3 Vago planters here. There's the green planters that you see in our garden. Oh, what's this? The green planters here. So we are testing those out. We're trialing those out. We're thinking they may be cheaper than doing that's supposed to last 20 years. They might be cheaper than the wood that deteriorates so rapidly. So we're trialing it out, and right now we have a winner who supports, hey, we need the one that's counter-type. Yes. So just like a kitchen knife. And yes, and so Elizabeth thinks that's going to be the winner. So anyway, I thank you, and I hope you know a little bit more.
Thank you, Peg. Do you have questions or comments for Peg? Lynn Ryan?
I can't tell my
I should have said that. They're metal, they're corrugated, covered metal. We chose ours to be in green to go with the shutters.
Repeat any question.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. She wanted to know what those Lego planters were made out of. And they are corrugated metal, and they are coated with a paint. It's supposed to last 20 years, we'll see. You can make so many configurations out of them. We chose the tall one. We chose another one that was more rectangular. And then we chose one to go by our sidewalk where we have people with walkers and they use the ones by the sidewalk and they have easy access that way. So we're kind of hoping this is be something we'll be able to continue.
Hold on, Alice. I just wondered where Grow House
Alice, wait just a second till we get over there.
Where Grow Hub is?
and Grow Hub.
Grow Hub?
Oh,
What do you want to know?
where
Where is
they're
it?
located.
Well, Grow Hub is, now they have a website, and I say, well, look at their website, because they have different kinds of hours. They're not there on Fridays, but they're there Saturdays and Sundays, and their hours are sometimes just in the morning, so check that.
But where is it, Jim?
But if you go out, I go out 8th Avenue, no, I go out University, excuse me, all the way, continue down University until I get to 25th Street, and I make a left.
Yeah,
Or
University
on
East.
University.
Go east on University. And it's behind Lofton High, basically. And we used to be able to go through Lofton High to get to it, but now we have to go by 8th Avenue.
I think probably the easiest thing would be to look on the internet and get it, yeah. And then as Peg said, I think it's the 20th of April. The fellow who's in charge, is his name David? Will be here to give the Wonders presentation, and Roy will be the facilitator for that.
There will be David and Chuck Coble. I understand David is bringing Chuck Coble, whose daughter has developmental issues, and so she's been there for a long time. Chuck was the attorney for Chan's for many years, but he's also volunteering there now. I think it'll be a very interesting presentation.
Thank you, Roy.
Now, not only at their Grow Hub, you talk about different organizations. They have a lot of different, Santa Fe College has a little greenhouse there. A lot of other parts of the community take part in Grow Hub.
Okay, thank you, Peg. And if you think of other questions, Julianne, should I get in front of the camera?
Yes, go entertain them while we have
I'll entertain you. I'll try to walk across the floor without limping. Yeah, so thanks, Peg, and Mary will be up in just a minute. And then if you have other questions for either one of them at the end, we'll have some time. So our next presenter is Mary White, who she told me this morning. I said, how long have you lived in Gainesville? And she said, let me think. We moved here in 1973. And then she said, oh my gosh, that's 50 years ago. So there's always something interesting with Mary. She is a master gardener and has been for over 20 years, and has given presentations on, or a presentation on bromeliads for the master gardeners. We have in-service training also. She did teach 5th grade over at Idlewild School, which is right close to us, sort of our neighborhood school. And she has been president of the Bromeliad Society, which she can tell you more about that. And if you really like bromeliads, you can always go and see fantastic bromeliads there. But we have fantastic bromeliads here with Mary to talk about it. Those of you who are sitting in the back, I know I'm a back room sitter myself, but you might want to come on up and so you can see what Mary is doing here. And with that, she's ready. I present her. Enjoy. Are we sure I'm ready? Can you hear me? Oh, that's good, I guess. Yes, president of the Vermilion Society. As soon as they found out I could spell the word, they said, okay, you're it. I am not going to be telling you how to grow bromeliads. We have a nice handout which tells you a lot to do. I'm going to tell you why I think they're so special. First, I'll give you a little bit of general information, then I'll tell you why I really like them, and then I'm going to show you three different kinds and what makes them unusual. So, bromeliads. There are over 3,400 species of bromeliads. Now back in the 70s, they thought there were 2,500, but they keep discovering more. And they're definitely an American plant, mostly in South America. That's where they've been discovered, and that's where they keep discovering more. They're epiphytes, mostly, which means they're air plants, although they do not kill what they're growing on, like orchids. They grow as epiphytes. But bromeliads are so adaptable, once they fall down to the ground, they become terrestrial. That's one reason I like them. They grow all the way from 1 inch in size up to 35 feet in size. They grow along the sea coast, and they grow up in the mountains up to 14,000 feet. So you can see these things are really kind of unusual. Now, what makes them a bromeliad? I just found this out when I was doing my research. All bromeliads have scales on them. Now, I did bring a magnifying glass, and sometimes if you look carefully, you can actually see any bromeliad that looks kind of fuzzy. It's not really a fuzz, it's the scales. They all have scales, but some you can see more than others. And of course, they're using the scales to get carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. And some bromeliads do this in the middle of the night because they have to adapt to dry conditions. When it's humid at night and cooler, they do their gas exchange. Very unusual for plants, I think. Most of them are without stems, as you can see this one. They just grow from the ground up. They really don't have stems to them. And many are adapted to very dry conditions, almost like succulents, like cactuses. Okay, now here's what you came to hear. I told a couple of people I finally found this out, and I wouldn't tell them before today. Why do most bromeliads die after blooming? I did not know this. I knew that's what happened, but I didn't know why. Well, it turns out bromeliads get new leaves from the inside of the plant. Then eventually the old leaves die off, but they do not make new leaves on the outside. They make them on the inside. So when they're getting ready to flower, they stop making leaves. And for most of them, after they're done flowering, they're then going to die. But of course, bromeliads make pups. That's when they have their babies. But that's the main reason why so many will die after blooming, because they're no longer able to make leaves. They've changed so that they can't do that. All right, why do I like bromeliads? Number one, they are very easy to care for. So here's my first bromeliad story. It was the late 90s, and I went to somebody's garage sale, and he was selling bromeliads. And so I bought one, and I said, what do I do with it? He said, put it under a tree. And so I brought it home where we lived. This was in Forest Ridge. I put it under the tree, and it was okay. It was just there. It wasn't doing too much. And then we went on sabbatical. We were going to be gone for a year. Students were living in our house. So I gave all my good plants to friends to watch, and I looked at the bromeliad, and I threw it under the deck. I said, well, good luck. Really, the deck was kind of high, and I went underneath. I forgot about it. It was well over a year later when I'm outside and I'm on my hands and knees, and I look under the deck, and there are the bromeliads, and they're growing, and there's more than one. And I pull them
thought to myself, this is the plant for me. This baby did not die. Also, I like the fact that they're so different, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. And they tend to flower unexpectedly. When I lived in my other house, I had a lot of bromeliads in the front yard. And several times I'd go out to get the newspaper, and I'd look over, and there was one flowering. I had no idea it was going to flower, so I thought that was kind of cool. This guy here, I don't know if you can see this. Sometimes bromeliads grow like this, they grow on stolons. So when I joined the Bromelia Society here in Gainesville about 15 years ago, somebody gave me a little little plant. I said, what do I do with it? And she said, oh, try to stick it on some wood and put it in a tree. So I went home with it, and I got a little moss and an old piece of nylon, and I wrapped it around with some fishing wire. This was a little piece of wood. And I put it on the tree, and that was 15 years ago. And you can see, there they are, and I've given many of them away. It has 4 little babies coming out. This particular one, and I really don't even know what it is, I can guess, but I don't know for sure. The more sun it gets, the redder it gets. So it's really kind of a neat plant. Now you don't want it in the direct sun, that's too hot in Florida, but in a tree where there's a lot of bright light, and I don't do anything to it. I mean, there it is, it's just sitting there, growing away. Of course, you know, this is one of our famous bromeliads, Spanish moss, right here. This is a bromeliad, and if you are hungry, there's another bromeliad over there to eat, and that would be pineapple. So, there's, okay, I think I covered that. All right. Oh, just one more. Oh, here's a bromelia. Now this guy is clearly dead, but isn't that kind of cool? I found it outside. Ron Schonow, who lives here, is really the bromeliad expert. And this was, the rest of the plant's living, but this was clearly one of the dead ones. And it's just kind of a neat, you can see that this is really sort of a weird looking bromeliad. This guy, when it's alive and it's going to flower, it turns very red inside. Most bromeliads are grown for their color. I don't think they're really grown for their flowers. Some are, but not all. So this guy, the brighter the light, the more it's going to turn. I don't know what that one is either, but he's outside. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 3 different kinds. These guys here, they're called Bilbergia. So, Bilbergia, these were the first ones that were brought to the U.S. They grow mostly in eastern Brazil. And they're very popular because, number one, they're easy to grow and they multiply quickly. They are epiphytes. In eastern Brazil, these are going to be in the trees. But of course, if one falls down, it starts growing. Now, these guys are in soil. I've got them in soil, and they're doing just fine. The bloom, I've got an old bloom on here, which I don't know if you know, that the bloom is dead. The bloom does not last long, but when it comes out, it's very pretty. It comes out, it's kind of a pink color with different little colors, but it's a short-lived bloom, like maybe 5 days. On some bromeliads, the bloom can last 6 months, but not this guy. But after it's done blooming, it makes lots of young ones. So this poor thing will not live forever, but it's going to be making babies. I think it's got 2 already, and there's another one in here. They multiply quickly, and they're easy to grow, and they're kind of pretty mottled. Some are plain, but these are Bilbergias. Okay, now we get to the weird ones here. I wouldn't say they're pretty, but they're sure interesting. This is, I'm going to come around. This is an orthophytum. Now, notice the spike is coming out of the center of the plant, and there are tons of little babies here. Can you all see this? These little babies. Now, you wouldn't want to take a little one off. They don't do so well. Usually, if you're going to pull off a vermilion pup, you want to wait till it's about a third the size of the mother. But this guy has also had some babies in here. Somewhere, there are some babies that are coming from the bottom. So this thing's putting out babies all over the place. But these little guys are so cute. I'm not using a lot of terminology here. I hope you don't mind. And you can see how this looks gray. These are the scales that I was talking about that are really pretty clearly visible. A vermilion that's native to Florida is Tillandsia, and you can see those scales also. Okay, here's another orthophytum, and it's sort of doing the same thing. Here's the stalk. Now, it doesn't have so many babies, but this one's getting pretty large. And this guy has also made some babies from the bottom of the stem. So it's just producing babies all over the place. And I don't know about the flowering. I've never seen this flower. So there might be a tiny little flower. See, I don't know too much, but they're so much fun to grow. Okay, and here we have cryptanthus. These guys are terrestrial, meaning they do not grow up in the trees. They grow in the ground. So here's one. It's kind of neat, green, light colored, and they produce young ones from sort of inside the plant. I mean, here's the plant, and here's the baby coming out. So, and it's got a couple here. They do not go from the bottom of the plant. All right. Here's another one. This one's growing upstairs in my apartment. It has sort of an east view. Now this one is blooming. Not much to talk about. It's a little tiny white flower in there. Very, very small. Obviously, you're not growing this plant for the flower because there's not much to it. If this one was getting more sun, it would be probably a brighter shade of pink. And it's, let's see, no babies yet, but because it's flowering, there'll be some babies coming out. I think, though I could be wrong, that these two plants are related. Ooh. This guy has been sitting outside near the greenhouse under, well, actually in the crook of a tree. And I left, let's see, somebody said you wouldn't show that, would you? All right, I left this part on. There was a lot more, but I cut it off. I think Peg made me do it. I think this is because it's getting too much sun, and so it's not so great, so I can cut that off. But it's got a ton of babies. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, and there are probably more. And because it's in bright light, it's really pretty color. And once again, I'm not doing anything to it out there. It's just sitting out there. Okay. Here's the weird one. Once again, this is another cryptanthus. This is up in my apartment, and the blooms are about dead now. And I noticed it's got a tiny little baby coming out in there. You can't see it. It's really small, but it's going to be blooming. It's got I think this is another one that I just put in with it, because the babies usually come out from the middle. But that is such a weird foliage. And once again, if I take my husband was a stamp collector. He's got a tiny little magnifying glass that's really strong. And if I look at the leaves, put water on them, I can see they're called trichomes. I can see the things closing up, taking in the water, and then they open back up. It's really cool. Now, the neat part about this is the child of this guy. Now, I was going to throw it up because once it bloomed and it had those nice pups, I thought, okay, that's the end of that. And I can't bear to throw it out. So once again, out near the greenhouse, I stuck it underneath a tree, and I sort of kept watching. Okay, pretty soon it'll die, and then I'll get rid of it. Oh no! See the baby? babies? See those babies coming? This little lady is not dead, she's producing more. So even though it looks pretty ratty, it is making more puffs. And that's, I guess, the main reason I like bromeliads. Any questions?
With most plants, when you say they have scale, we want to spray and get rid of it.
Right.
So explain to me why scale is a good thing for
Well, this is
bromeliads.
SCALES, and the proper term is trichomes.
Oh,
I didn't want to throw those big words around, so it's
okay. Not for you.
not scale, but actually scale is one thing that will attack. Most bromeliads are pretty insect free. They don't get attacked by many insects. But scale SCALE is one thing that will, and you can use little rubbing alcohol and Dawn detergent to get rid of it. But yeah, that was a good point. The scales they call them trichomes, and they're the little holes that do the gas exchange.
The one on the far left, what classification would they be? Because that's like the one I have at home.
What classification is the plant?
Well, I could guess. Neoregelia? How does that sound? Does that sound good? No, okay. Yeah, no. No, I'm not very good at it. I mean, there are, like 35 different genera. And I think I got it down, and then somebody says, no, that's not what that is. That's a blah, blah. And I'm guessing a neo. Neos are the kind that often have very lovely striped and pretty insides. That's why I like Bilbergias, because those I can spot. Oh, that's a Bilbergia. And another thing about Bilbergias, they have like 5 to 8 leaves. They don't have a whole lot of leaves around them.
Mary, I'm delighted that you gave this presentation today, and I can relate to it because I never know the formal names, but I'm just tickled with them. I have something called a soap aloe, and it bloomed for the first time twice in the last 6 months. And like you, I'm a proud mama. I'm a proud mama.
Oh, okay. Yeah, aloe's the succulent. Sometimes people confuse various bromeliads and aloe plants. They grow under the same kind of conditions.
Mary, I have a very large vermilion, and you saw my bloom.
Yes.
Right now, it's probably this long.
Yeah.
Does it mean when that beautiful plant that doesn't have any scales, it's just gorgeous, when that bloom falls off, that plant's going to die?
Well, but it's going to make some babies, isn't it, Matt? Have you looked around the bottom?
I haven't. No, I didn't know about the babies, but
Yeah, I saw her plant. I think maybe you have a Guzmania, but I could be wrong there. There are 2 kinds of bromeliads that don't have any, what's that word I want? Little prickers on the leaves.
this has no prickle.
And I think yours is one of, the leaves are very smooth.
Yes.
So I think what you have is a Guzmania. And it should, the plant will eventually die, but it should produce offspring.
I love the name Guzmania. That's
Okay, well,
very
then
exciting.
that's what it is. If you like that name,
Thank you.
that's what we're calling it.
I'll be a good foster mom if you want to give any of your babies to me.
Yeah. Let's see, you don't want to grow them in the full sun. That is not, Florida sun is really too hot. The leaves do start, they don't like it. And another easy way to kill bromeliads is to give them too much water. And that's how I've lost some. Because when you put them in dirt, you have to put something called perlite with it to make the dirt real fluffy. You want it to drain very well. They need water, but it should drain easily. And if the pot is in a lot of moist soil for a long time, it's gonna rot. And I have lost some that way.
Mary, I have a question or a comment and then get some confirmation from you. I live in one of the houses and I have some bromeliads in the back. I brought them up from West Palm Beach actually. And one year, the garden looked just lovely. It's a little tiny plot, it's not really a big garden. And then we had a frost. And I'm like, oh no, my bromeliads are all dead, what am I gonna do? And somebody said, don't touch them. Wait till the spring and the pups will come up. And they did. And it got lovely again. And then we had another frost 3 years later. So I have some out there now that are sort of dead from the frost that we had. But have you heard, has anyone said that to you before? Or
Yes,
yeah.
yes. You know, our winters really are warmer. I remember when I first got interested in bromeliads and I was living in a house, the first couple winters that it got very cold, they were in pots. They were sort of in pots stuck in the ground. And boy, I was putting those things into the garage. I was worried about it. We haven't had a really cold winter. Even this year with the cold winters, I put some in the greenhouse, but I'm not sure they needed to go in there. They're 32 degrees, most of them are still going to do okay. Now, if it goes down to 20 and there's a wind, then you could have a problem. But that's, I think, one reason they've become more popular up here in Gainesville, because as Peg said, we've changed. We're not A-B anymore. We're not A now. And so it's easier to grow them.
Yeah, that's true. In South Florida, you just barely let them fall on the ground and you have a lovely garden and they keep growing and growing.
Let me say one more thing about South Florida and the Zika virus. Do you remember a few years ago Zika came through and everyone wanted to get rid of all their bromeliads because mosquitoes will breed in the cups and bromeliads. Well, so down in Miami, apparently they just went ahead and pulled out millions of bromeliads to get rid of Zika. Well, someone here, lovely entomologist who recently passed away, did a lot of research on mosquitoes and Zika. And it turns out the mosquitoes that will breed in bromeliads do not carry Zika. In fact, they do not like the Zika mosquitoes. So they're actually beneficial because they try to destroy that particular mosquito. And they didn't realize that in Miami when they pulled them all out. So you will have mosquitoes. Somebody said to me, I don't like bromeliads because of the mosquitoes, and then those mosquitoes bite me. One thing to do is just take your hose and flush out the center cup, so then you get rid of the bugs.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any other questions for Mary or for Peg or for me at this point?
Any questions from our Zoomers? They're here. So Mary, these can live their whole lives in pots? They don't have to be in the ground?
Yes, they can live their whole lives in pots. And in fact, because they tend to be more epiphytes, more air plants, what's that, what do you call those things that grow out of the bottom of the plant? Roots, yes, I knew that hard word. The roots tend to be, I'm a Michigan person, the roots tend to be very small and they don't grow a whole lot. So yeah, they can be in small pots. Once they start multiplying, like these guys, I was looking at these and I thought, yeah, they could maybe go in a bigger pot just because they're multiplying this way. It's not that the root system is so large.
But you don't transplant a lot, do you?
No. Oh, one more thing, talking about why I like bromeliads. When I moved here to Ocala, I moved in April, a couple of years ago, and I brought them over in March, and Ron Schonau gave me space to put them under a tree, and so there they were all under a tree, and as soon as I moved in, I was going to take care of them, and blah, 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 blah. And a week after I moved in, I was walking with a friend, fell down, broke a bone in my elbow. I needed surgery, but everything was fine. But anyway, I had this cast for I don't know how many weeks. Well, I was not thinking about bromeliads, I'll tell you that. I totally forgot about it. When I finally did get out there, they were fine. I didn't lose any. I mean, they were probably happy I was gone.
I think you can see why her fifth graders never wanted to miss class. next week, and I hope you'll all be here, and bring friends if you want to. Or I shouldn't say that, right, Julia?
Come into the camera. Come into the. Yeah, it's all the room.
As you can tell, I have a bad knee as I try to walk across. Anyway, next week we are going to have Nelson Logan here to talk about bonsai, and we have quite a bonsai habitat, I guess I should say, over by the greenhouse. He will give a demonstration and talk about his experiences actually with bonsai, give a demonstration. And then his wife, Henry Logan, will be here to talk about and show orchids. So it should be very good, and then we'll go from there. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Oh,
I just have a comment about the history of Garden Gate Nursery. It was inspired by the Tallahassee Nursery, and if any of you know it, it's very large and really spectacular. And so when Riley Blitch and Tommy Piper got out of school, and Riley had a couple of years in the Army, they were close friends growing up here. In fact, Riley's father had been county agent for the St. Augustine area, and then a long time here in Gainesville. So Riley had grown up in that environment, and the two of them had the idea of opening a nursery. And so when they opened that nursery on 43rd, it was a narrow little 2-lane road, and they were the only people out there. They also had a large piece of property further near the mill hopper where they grew plants. But it's an interesting local history, I think. And Riley's son now has it. But I've always been impressed with the quality of the plants and the quality of the care.
Good family business.
Thank you, Roy. I agree with that it's a wonderful place if you're interested in plants. I assume that you are, or why would you be here? Okay, so we'll see you next week. Same time, same place.